Hi, I'm Tim Moss with Custom Guns, Ammo, and Repairs. Today what I wanted to go over with you is what does it take to get into muzzleloading. Of course, you know you need the gun. Everybody knows they need the gun. I've never had anybody call and ask me, do I need a gun? they know they need that. But then they want to know, what else am I going to need to purchase besides the gun? Well, you know, if you have a conversion done with like the Scout 4570 or Paramount or any of the others, the ignition system is going to be in the gun, and you're going to have your modules. And of course, all of our conversions come with a Picatinny rail. So at that point forward, you know, you're going to need your scopes. You're going to need your rings, whatever scope you want to put in those rings. And most people understand that. There's a few people that wonder why the scope doesn't come with it, but there's such a big, and there's a variety of prices, and you know, I just wouldn't want to pick somebody's scope. So scope and rings, and which seems kind of obvious. And besides that, there's a bunch of little things that a lot of people might miss. So what we want to do is just look at each individual item very shortly. You know, just look at a real short time so you can get an idea of the different things you need to acquire to get into smokeless muzzleloading. So these things are all lined up in no particular order, and I guess just for convenience we'll start at my right and work across to what they are. So this is an RCBS universal primer for your modules. I have another video if you want to see how to make this thing work, but you need something to prime your modules. So whether it's this or something else, you need something to deprime your modules. So this is a little deprimer. You'll put your module in the center and then you just punch it out. But you need to deprime, so you'll need one of these. You need to seat your bullets. So this is a collapsing ramrod. I get a lot of calls for these. Guys want to use these things. Personally, now I don't mean any offense to anybody. Personally, I don't like them. If you needed to pull a bullet out, you see how they're put together with like bungees. You're not going to pull a bullet out. It's just for pushing a bullet in. And I have been hunting before, stumbled and got mud and stuff in my barrel, and I would not want to count on one of these to clean my barrel out. You know, so I like ramrods like this, either, you know, screw together 3-piece or just a 1-piece. So I like a little bit more sturdy. Some guys still are using these and they like them. I don't like them. But you need a ramrod. You need a tip for your ramrod. This here is a Pittman tip for Pittman bullets. I like to start my bullets with a T-handle. A lot of guys, they'll try putting their bullet down the barrel and they use the ramrod, and it's real easy to get your bullet in a little wonky using that ramrod. So instead I like using a little T-handle. Start the bullet and just tap it a little bit, and it goes in there just the way it's supposed to. It doesn't go in wonky if you use a little T-handle. So I like one of these. You need primers. Now large rifle primers is what I like to use. Some guys say that they like using Magnum rifle primers. You can actually use either one. You can use the Magnum, you can use the large rifle primers. The studies I've seen show that the large rifle primers are more accurate than the Magnum rifle primers. And there's some guys that will tell you that the Magnum burns hotter than the large rifle primers. So I was curious about that, so I called a couple different manufacturers, and what they told me was that Magnum does not burn any hotter than the large rifle primers. They have sturdier materials to withstand the pressures of Magnum loads. And what I found is these breech plugs are so efficient, Jeff Hankins breech plugs are so efficient that large rifle primers withstand the pressure in their breech plugs fine. You don't get the kind of blowback that you would probably get shooting a large Magnum cartridge. So large rifle primers work fine for me, but you can use Magnum if you can find them. The way it's hard to find primers now, most guys are happy just to find anything. So whether they find large or Magnum, you know, it's okay to use them. Then you got a sizing die. You're gonna need to size your bullets. So these barrels come .452. You know, whether you get a Brooks barrel or the barrel that comes with the Scouts, or almost any other barrel, .452 for the 45, you get the .452, but what happens as the tooling starts to wear down, your barrel goes from 452, and I'll see it throughout the year. Barrels will come in to be 4515, .4515. Well, you can't shoot that down your barrel, so now you got to size that bullet. So there's a few months out of the year that I get barrels in that'll be exactly 452, and they don't need to get sized, but there's not that many of them. Most of the barrels are going to be between 452 and 448, and that's why you need a sizing die, because you need to size it for that barrel, and I'm talking about land size. Then you need bullets. My preference is Pittman bullets. I like the Pittman bullets, and the way I got into shooting Pittman bullets is when I started with the smokeless muzzleloaders, I bought a little bit of all kinds of bullets from everywhere. Some from bullets out of country. And I examined the bullets, weighed the bullets, took the bullets apart, and I found the Pittman bullet to be the most uniform. It also has a very high ballistic coefficient, and you know, you guys that shoot a lot, you know uniformity, repetition, you know, the same thing over and over again is what gets you good groups. These bullets are the same bullet time and again. You know, there's very little deviation from bullet to bullet, if any. So that's why I use the Pittman bullets. Now we're going to wool pads. Some of the guns you get, especially the Scouts, will shoot better with a wool pad. Some don't like the wool pads, some do. So this is a possibility that you might need some wool pads. I have some Scouts that shoot really tight half-inch groups without the pads, and I have some Scouts that need the pads to get the half-inch groups. Of course, you need powder to make it all work. A lot of guys say, what kind of powders do you usually use? My preference is H4198. H is very temperature stable, more stable than IMR, but IMR is not a bad, it doesn't, when I say temperature stable, I don't mean it's not going to go off. What I mean is you can take it in a variety of temperatures and it's going to hit pretty consistently. So if you have to get IMR 4198 and you can't find H, which it's hard to find H right now, if you get IMR, and that's what I had to hunt with last season, is I made sure that I tested my scope. My sight-in was the same from shooting in the summertime, which I just made a slight adjustment for the winter time, and then I hunted with it and it was fine. The other powder that we use is Vitavori N120. So your three powders that we primarily use are H4198, IMR 4198, and Vitavori N120. So you also need a funnel to, well, most guys have a muzzle brake, but even if you don't have a muzzle brake, it's good to have a funnel. So this is just a normal funnel that goes in your barrel through the brake, and it's not a load-through funnel. So you pull your powder in there, you pull it out, put your bullet in. Here's another kind of funnel, and this is a load-through funnel. So you put this in, put your powder in, and you can pass your bullet right through this funnel, and also your T-handle and your ramrod. Well, this is all in place, and this helps align your bullet. Next, we have tubes to hold your powder. So, you know, your powder needs to be weighed. So you can't just, like with black powder, go by volume. You want to go by weight. So and you're not going to carry your scale out to field. So you need to have some tubes in order to carry your powder around. So guys ask me, well, where do you get your tubes? You know, these things are pretty much all the same. So you can pay a lot for them, you can pay a little. eBay usually has pretty good deals on these tubes. So you can usually get a pretty good amount of tubes for not very much money. You know, maybe 40 tubes or so for 15, 20 bucks on eBay. I didn't pay much for these tubes. And last but not least, this is a very important item. This is a powder measure. Now this is just one kind. This is a beam scale. This one here must be, well, I know, I bought this about 35 years ago. I don't use this thing anymore. Very seldom. If I want to double check my electronic scales, I'll get this thing back out. But you need one of these, and if you're going to use the beam scale, you need a powder trickler. In order, there's a little cup that hangs from here in order to trickle the powder in that cup, so you get your measurement. There's also electronic scales that, you know, they're 50, 60 bucks. But even if you use electronic scales, it's good to use a trickler to one of these powder tricklers to get the powder onto the scale. And then there's a whole upgrade of scales where you can get to automatically dispensing scales, where you just type in or you punch in how many grains you want to come out, and it'll measure it and kick it out itself. So these are the items that you're going to need to get into smokeless muzzleloading. So it's not something that, you know, well, you're going to get your muzzleloader for whatever you pay for it, $600, $1,200, $2,000, whatever it is. Keep in mind, you got all these things to buy after you buy your gun in order to make your gun run. So to give you an example, these RCBS hand presses, hand primers, you know, they run 65 to 85 bucks. Deep primer and a punch is going to run you about $35. For these different ramrods, you can spend them from $15, you know, up to $60 or so, depending on what ramrod. These little T-handles, they're not that much. They're only about, you know, $15 or so. These tips for the Pittman bullets, I think by the time you get everything that rotates them and everything, I think it's about $35 for the tips. The primers, boy, they used to be, you could get 1,000 for 35 bucks. Now you're lucky to pay 35 bucks for 100. The different sizing dies, there's quite a few companies that make sizing dies. I'd say about 160 is a good average price for your sizing die. Your Pittman bullets, you know, they're going to run you about $125 per 50. Your pads don't cost that much. You're talking maybe 15 bucks, I think, for 50 or so. Powder, you can spend anywhere from $50 to $100 a pound. The funnels, you know, depending on which funnel you get these in aluminum, you can get them in stainless steel, so you can spend anywhere from 15 bucks all the way to 50 bucks for a funnel, sometimes 65. The little tubes don't cost that much. You get these on eBay, $15, $20. This powder trickler is as old as this beam scale, but last I saw powder tricklers, I think they were around $50, and these beam scales were around $100. And then if you want a automatic dispensing scale, you're looking at $500 and up. So these are the items that it takes. You know, it's not a bad idea. Lots of times we get guys that they're getting 2 or 3 guns at a time. You know, it's a group of friends. And in that case, a lot of those guys, they'll go in and buy all these things together, split it 3 ways, and that's a less expensive way to get into doing this. But it's not uncommon once you get your gun to spend $300 or $400 for the accessories. So I hope that gives you guys an idea of what it takes to get into smokeless muzzleloading. I can tell you this, I mean, it might look overwhelming, but you know, when you guys were learning to drive, it was overwhelming too, and it was well worth the effort to learn to drive. So once you get into smokeless muzzleloading, just about everybody I know that's gotten into it said, I wish I would have done it a lot sooner. I wish I never would have fooled around with black powder. So I think it's well worth the effort, but for you guys making a decision if you want to do it or not, this will give you a good idea if you're up to the task of getting into smokeless muzzleloading.